Okay, come to order, come to order. The first point of business is those awful Christians. I'm sick of these Christians. They're always poking their noses in and making comments about how we should lead our lives, about who we should follow, who we should believe in. I wish they'd go away. I mean, what have the Christians ever done for us?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Well, how about infanticide?
What?
You know, infanticide. Just Google it. And you'll see it was practiced by countries all over the world. People saw children as simply a resource. Their worth was what they could contribute to the family. I mean, before Christians came to Rome, it was common if a child wasn't wanted, you just exposed it. You left it outside to die of hypothermia or to be eaten by the dogs or be taken up to be raised as a slave or something worse. That's right. Even Aristotle said, as to exposing or rearing the children born, let there be a law that no deformed child shall be reared. And he also added that too many children might also be a good reason to discard them. Yet when Christians came on the scene, believing everybody to be made in the image of God, they collected these abandoned infants and raised them as their own. They started the first orphanages. Well, it took a lot of work, but finally, after 300 years of trying to persuade Rome, a law banning the exposing of infants was made in, I think, AD 374.
Okay, other than eradicating infanticide, what have the Christians ever done for us?
Feeding the hungry?
What?
Well, look at all the organisations that exist that are centred on feeding the hungry, feeding the poor. Aren't most of them faith-based organisations? Most societies never practiced such a thing before Christians came along. In fact, Plato in the 4th century said that the unworthy poor should be banished from the city. Christians are taught that God loves them, absolutely, that on that basis they can trust in God, they can love God, and because they are given such an abundance of love, they can afford to love one another with enormous, unreserved generosity. And with that idea of love goes care of the vulnerable. I mean, this is a world with no social safety nets. But Christians create social safety nets. They are the people who are notorious for looking after the widows, the poor, the orphans, most of the people in the society who are just slung out onto the street.
Okay, other than eradicating infanticide and feeding the hungry, what have the Christians ever done for us?
Oh, and hospitals.
What?
Christians interpret the healing ministry of Jesus not as an inspiration for contemporary miracle working, but as a sign of what God will one day do to restore the world, and therefore as an indication of the responsibility of the church to heal the world wherever it can, with whatever resources it may possess.
Yes, the public hospital was an invention of Basil the Great in the AD 300s. He employed live-in medical staff who cared for the sick, drawing on the best traditions of secular Greek medicine. The healthcare centre, there's no other way to describe it, included 6 separate departments, one for the poor, another for the homeless and strangers, a house for orphans and foundlings. I mean, the church in the 4th century was still collecting exposed infants. A completely separate section for lepers, rooms for the aged and infirm, and a hospital proper for the sick.
Well, that may be, but hospitals today are often, in many countries, run by their governments.
Yes, but it was the Christians that started them. And it's no accident that one of the oldest manuscript copies of the Hippocratic Oath is a Byzantine manuscript in the shape of a cross.
OK then, well, other than the eradication of infanticide, the feeding the hungry and the introduction of hospitals, what have the Christians ever done for us?
Free burials?
What?
You've heard of the catacombs. This is where the Christians offered burials to all people. Before this, if you didn't have money, then your body could be thrown on the rubbish tip. But because Christians believe that we were made in the image of God, then our bodies require dignity, even in death. Even today, we have laws that will give dignified burials to those who die without family, are homeless or with no means. Yes, in fact, we know that the leaders of the ancient world were quite concerned that Christianity was growing so fast, turning people away from their traditional beliefs and gods. And one leader, Julian, the last pagan emperor of Rome, complained that this was their care for the graves of the dead, the pretended holiness of their lives, and the fact that they not only took care of their own poor, but his as well.
OK, so they've eradicated infanticide, they've fed the poor and the hungry, they've introduced hospitals and free burials. Anything else?
Well, public education. Education used to only be for the wealthy, but Christians established schools for all, irrespective of status or wealth.
And Christmas and Easter holidays are probably the two biggest celebrations in the world. We even date our time according to the date we think Jesus was born.
And they introduced the concepts of humility and compassion as moral strengths to be valued, where before in Roman society, for example, they were seen as weaknesses.
OK, that's enough. Meeting dismissed. I'm going home.
Despite the fact that Christians have sometimes failed in living up to the teachings of their leader, Jesus Christ, history tells us that many of the benefits we enjoy today are as the result of the enormous change people underwent when they became his followers. One of which was a desire to show his love for the world through their service to others. We continue to see examples of this in history and in today's times. Now, I've only touched on a few in the skit, but believe me, there are many more examples. If you want to know more about how Jesus changes people and how by so doing they change the world, how he can in fact even change you, then give us a hoy in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And God bless.